What's up, you guys? This is Editing Levi letting you know real quick that initially I had left off the provisional characters because I feel like I didn't have enough data and experience with them to rank them accordingly, but I kind of figured that it'd be weird to have like a definitive set 1 tier list without having all the characters in it, so I just kind of added them at the end. So you're going to be watching the whole video. They won't be in the roster, but they will come in at the end, so just stay tuned for that. Thanks, you guys, and enjoy the video. What is up, you guys? Welcome to another Alliteration gaming video. I am Levi, and today we're going to be going over, yes, the tier list. The almighty tier list video is happening right here, right now, today. So, we have not had any new characters since our last tier list video, but a lot has happened. Namely, many provisional showdowns, many new results, and just a lot of new things coming to fruition. But the big thing, the big elephant in the room that has now been shoved into the closet is Kirishima. Coordinated effort has been banned, and Kirishima has pretty much been completely neutered in his kit. And that affects the meta in a drastically complex number of ways, and that's kind of why we're doing a new tier list video today, so we can kind of go over that. So first off, I want to clarify that these are all just my opinions. I'm by no way thinking I'm stating facts here. This is just how I personally feel. You are 100,000 billion% welcome to feel any other different ways, and if you do feel different ways, I'd love to know about them down in the comments section below. Otherwise, these are my thoughts regarding the tier list. So the first thing I want to do regarding this tier list itself, right, is just kind of go over what the tiers actually mean, because I think it's a really important clarification in, well, all tier lists, but especially for this game, because in this game there's really not like a bad character. I could see myself winning a game with pretty much any character. A lot of it really is down to like pilot skill and familiarity with the character and the ability to bring out like their max value, right? So going into what these tiers actually mean, we have the S tier. These are our top dogs. These are the guys that I expect to see all of them in top 16, and I expect them to win the event, right? These are the ones that I pretty much am expecting to win the big events, right? And then A tier is our strong and competitive tier. These are also the guys that I will not be surprised to see a single one of them in the top 16. If they win, I also won't be surprised. Like, these are just the very strong characters. They're just kind of like a hair under the S tier, right? Like, these tiers are really similar, but at the end of the day, there's like a little bit of nuance between them that makes me want to create separate tiers for them, so that's why they are. And then under that, we have the B tier, which is not necessarily bad, not even really like average by any means. They're just very solid, very decent, but very honest characters. And if you're wondering what kind of that means, if you're familiar with fighting game terms, it's kind of used a lot there, and it's very appropriate, right? Because our game is like a fighting game. All honest really means is these characters don't like break the game in any unique ways, and like they do good things. They're not really super hard to play around, and they're very honest in the way that they do their things, but they certainly do them. They do them very successfully, and they can very much take you down in a game. These are the characters that I would be a little surprised to see in top 16, but not that surprised, and I would be really surprised to see them win. But at the end of the day, I think a very dedicated player with like the 20th, 21st iteration of the deck, who's just like able to achieve the max value out of their character every game, all day, every day, could very much top and take down an event with these characters. Then under them, we have the C tier, which is kind of just like the average and moderate tier. I don't want to use the word mediocre because I feel like that's like a little rude to them. They're not like a bad by any means. They're just average. They're just very average characters. I don't really expect to see them doing anything crazy, and I'd be a little surprised if they did. And the D tier is just our very underwhelming tier. If our C tier is average, our D tier is our painfully average. Once again, not bad, just painfully average and underwhelming. And these aren't just like diplomat words. I genuinely don't think that these characters are like bad, unplayable, like trash. Like, they're so playable, you can so win games with them. It's just you have to work very hard, and you and then your main deck are going to be pulling so much more weight than your character ever will be when you're playing these guys in matches. So that's kind of just a very brief overview of what all our tiers mean. And I am also this time actually going to be kind of placing them in order on each tier, right? So they will be like a best to worst within the tiers themselves as well, more or less. Once it gets down to these lower tiers, it's a little more muddied up, but for the most part, especially up here, I will have them in a specific order of how I feel about them. Another thing I'd like to point out about this tier list is that even though we did do like one whole tier list before, like the meta looks so different now, and a lot of my opinions and experience with the characters have changed since then. So I am going to be going over pretty much everything I did in the first tier list video. You know, this is going to be like a quick overview on just what's changed. This is going to be very much meant to be a definitive set one tier list, right? Going into the rest of the format. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. First, we got All Might 1. All Might 1 is sadly, he's going in the same spot as he was on the first tier list video. I still think this character is just extremely underwhelming. He's just all in on these big gung-ho, like, you know, one-shot gigantic punch attack, and it's very cool and it's very thematic, but at the end of the day, a lot of stat resets exist in the game, plus Ultra can be played in every single deck, and like Detroit Smash is already a mid, and like you have all these damage resets, you can't even really cheese them with like the gigantic throws. It's just, there's just so many answers to what he wants to do, and his symbols are not able to play any of the answers to those answers. So like I think this is just a really bad one-trick pony deck, and that's just kind of all there is to say about All Might 1, sadly. Denki, Kaminari Denki. Okay, so I know he got his big win, but he's not going in S tier for me. He is just going to be an A tier. He's gonna stay pretty high up here. I do think Denki is definitely, like, if you're high rolling, he is one of the strongest characters in the game, right? And if you just like find your double 1.3s all day and just like check like a god, like, yeah, I think he definitely has like the most blowout potential of any of the aggro decks, but I don't really consider him like the definitive red deck when it comes to aggro, but he's very, very strong, he's highly competitive, and he's going to sit very, very comfortably in the A tier. Kind of like the definition of it, really. Like, he's like the definition of like the middle of the A tier for me. Kirishima, oh, how the mighty have fallen, how the mighty have fallen. Kirishima is going right into average and moderate. I don't think he's like underwhelming, I don't think he's bad, but he definitely doesn't do as much work as he used to. You have to work really, really, really hard to get those wins now. His whole play style is completely changed by his abilities being halved. Like, the way he played before simply doesn't work with that now, and he's just a very, very average character now. Aizawa, Mr. Eraserhead man himself. Eraserhead has been, still is, probably always will be a top dog for me. This man is S tier. I just can't argue with it. Like, this character is just really insane. This character is, like, all put together, this character is a 9-hander with +2 or -2 speed for free on every single attack. He can always recur, infinitely recur, right, until he runs out of cards, right? But he's a 9-hander. Infinitely recur, a +1 mid block with Breaker 1, and then sometimes he can sacrifice one hand size through all of that for your character to not exist. That's just kind of crazy. Also, he can on-demand seal anything he wants. Like, this character just has all the answers. He's like the epitome of the control playstyle, and I just think this guy is crazy. I just think this guy is really, really crazy, and I feel like he has not seen a lot of representation up until the most recent provisionals. We're going into Omaha next, but up until the most recent provisionals, he has not seen a lot of play, and now he's finally starting to pick up, especially with Kirishima gone now. He can play his long game that he wants to without just getting like ramped out by Kirishima. I think this character can kind of just do whatever he wants to, as long as he's not fighting like Jiro or something. And like, you can side into so many powerful characters for those matchups where erasing their character doesn't really do anything, if you like really desire to do that. I think he's just such a flexible and powerful character. He just plays a really good game of Universes. Tokoyami is going to be another strong A tier for me. I am putting him over Denki. I think Tokoyami and, spoiler alert, Froppy are like the definitive red decks of the format. If you just want to play some aggro, get in there. These are probably the most consistent guys to do it with and the most stable guys to do it with. They're seeing all of their cards, they have all of their options, and like their damage ceilings are just absolutely insane. That's just kind of all there is to it. Tokoyami is just a crazy strong aggro character. Sero, man, I really want to put Sero in A. I want to so bad, but the more I play Sero, the more I feel like he's just a little too honest. I think he's going to stay very high up here in B tier, I believe. But like, his game plan is solid. I think the biggest thing about him is that it takes a ton of player skill to utilize like to its fullest potential, if that makes sense. Like, you really have to know your zones, their zones, and you have to be constantly taking advantage of that knowledge and really, really putting the work in to get the wins with these characters. I'd say he's like the least honest of the honest characters, but he's still a pretty honest character, and I think he just has to sit there in B tier. He's got a great kit, he's got great abilities, he's annoying to play against, and definitely people who don't know how to play against him, you're going to do a lot better against, but as you go up the top tables, you're just not going to find that as much. So Sarah's going to sit in a B tier for me. Izuku Midoriya. Tam went 5-3, so I think this guy's got to be S tier, right? Midoriya for me is, I would like to put him here, but I think he's still just a little too underwhelming. He's going to be the top of my D tier for sure, but it's just really hard for me to bump him right up into that C tier. I think he just has to sit down here. Again, he's not bad, he's just a little underwhelming, and compared to it's more so compared to the characters that I am going to be putting in here, Midoriya just does not make the cut compared to those guys. He can certainly win games in the hands of a good player. He can certainly win quite a few games, but at the end of the day, you are working really hard, and your character is not supporting you very much in those efforts. Bakugo. Bakugo, I think, is a very average character. I think I'm putting him probably at the top of C tier. I think Bakugo is just a very average character. I think he's fine. I think the true way to play Bakugo right now is just high roll double front beatdown, which is a hard deck to place, right? Because sometimes it's this and then sometimes it's this, right? But I think overall as a character, Bakugo probably just sits pretty comfortably right here. I think he's fine, his kit is fine, his abilities are fine, he's just a very average character, and against good players, it's just going to be kind of hard to get your aggro in, and he's a character, my biggest issue with Bakugo is that he's a 6-hander. You see all these really strong 7-hander aggro characters, because they can see all their cards, right? Where, they don't care about their health total, because they're trying to just, one-shot people. Bakugo wants to do that too, but he's just got only 6 cards for some reason. It's just very detrimental to his playstyle overall. So I think he's going to sit right here for me. The Boogeyman. Yep, I do believe that Kyokujiro is our new best deck in the format. I don't think it's by a very large margin, right? I don't think it's by an insanely huge margin, but I do think that if you just want to take the best deck that you possibly can right now, Jiro is where it's at. Jiro just does so many things. She gets to play so much aggro. Specialized Sound Waves is the most cracked card ever. She gets to make sure, she gets to tell you to check bad, right? She gets to tell you to check bad. She gets to make sure she doesn't check bad. She gets to play so greedy because of that. Her stats are just, they're so free. Everything about this character is so free. Just rewards you for playing the game. The character is just insane, and if you fought it more than a handful of times and she's just blown you up for 40 damage on 3 foundations, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The character is just totally bonkers, and she's gonna sit and remain right on the top of S tier for me. Mineta. I think Mineta is fine. I think Mineta probably sits somewhere in the lower end of B. I think he's a fine character. He doesn't blow me away, but he is a nice silver bullet to some things, and he's just kind of a nice efficient character as far as just telling your opponent what they can and can't do, you know. I think he's just fine. I don't know. Again, Mineta, I don't really feel like I have a lot to say about Mineta. He's just a very decent character. Nomu, man. Nomu is never a character that I've been super hot on. I've always thought he was a bit of an A tier character. Kirishima just really put him down. But the more I play against Nomu and the more I see experienced players play against Nomu, and with the loss of coordinated effort, I think Nomu sits somewhere in the middle of B tier. I think just the more, like I said, the higher you climb the top tables, the more experienced and better players you'll fight. And the second you start fighting people who know how to block, this character is just not very threatening. He's also a true 5-hander. You have to just draw so many attacks to take down anyone, and people can just play a really good slow methodical game against you. It's honestly just really hard for Nomu to beat any 7-hander, and there's a lot of 7-handers up here, spoiler alert. It's just tough for him. It's just tough for him. In the hands of a good player, you can't take Nomu much farther than anyone could take him, because it's kind of just a matter of well, did I draw my attacks or not, right? There's obviously little things you can do here and there, but that's why Nomu kind of sits right here for me. Momo. I think Momo is fine. I think Momo is just a fine, average, very average C tier character. Her abilities are fine. What she wants to do is fine. Her game plan just doesn't really involve killing people. And that kind of just makes it hard to play, especially in a big competitive event, right? You're getting your one 45 50-minute game in, and then what, man? So I think she's just fine. Also, there's a lot of answers. There's a lot of answers coming to Staff Strike, and so I think she really just needs to be relooked at as a whole. We need to kind of reevaluate where we feel about Momo going forward. For Chaco 1 Dot, I think this character is really slept on. I think she's gonna be low A tier for me personally. I play this character a lot. I think she's really good. I think she's kind of just a lower ceiling but slightly more stable version of Jiro. but not by that much. And Jiro definitely still wins out in like the aggro games in the end. But Ochako can pull so many cool combos and interacts with all of her cards like so amazingly. Like being able to sound waves on turn 1 because you get to cheat that momentum is like some crazy plays. Getting to cheat your meteor showers are some crazy plays. Like this character just does a lot of really cool plays, and her aggro is so consistent, and her combos are just amazing. She's a very cool intricate combo aggro deck. So she's gonna sit right around there for me. Todoroki. So when I kind of talk about like it's right, it's hard to talk about like any water deck as a whole, right? Because like the water main deck is so good, so I'm really just looking at like how the character interacts with it. And I think he's probably gonna be like somewhere in B tier, something along the lines of this. I think Todoroki is like a fine character. He's nice. He's got the good scaling. He's got the cancel on his face. He's good. And water is just such a good symbol that like I don't think water is such a good symbol that I don't think it can really allow any of its characters. Aside from like maybe one to be anything below B tier, because water is such a strong card pool, and Todoroki is just a very decent character. Tenya Ida, 1 dot. Ida, I think Ida is probably somewhere along the lines of low C tier. He's just a very average character. Like his poke game is insane, but like when you need to kill people, that's not gonna help you a ton. Reciproverse, there's just like a lot more outs to it now, plus Ultra exists. It's not as consistent and stable of a game plan as far as finishing the game off anymore. And like that whole take the first enhance, he just needs more cards that interact with that. Like that ability is like one of the two abilities on his character. It's half the abilities on his character, and it only ever comes up in like some very niche scenarios. I think he's just a very average character. Shigaraki Tomura. Shigaraki, probably somewhere like right here. Very just solid, decent character. You know, he wants to debuild you. You know, he wants to get his poke in. He wants to get his burn damage in. He's just a very decent character. He's not trying to do anything game breaking. He's not doing anything game breaking. And also like the better opponents you fight as you go on, it's kind of like the Nomu syndrome. You know, right? The better your opponent is at blocking, the worse this character gets. And if your opponent knows like not to attack you super early on, then you kind of just don't really know what to do. Your character has like 50% of the text that it had before now. So I think he's like somewhere on the bottom of B tier. Froppy. Oh, Froppy. I think Froppy goes right between these boys right here. I think these two right here are like, or I should say these three, right, are like the definition of the red aggro decks in the format, just the pure aggro decks. And I pretty much rank them in terms of stability. I think Tokoyami is the most consistent because he can get his Dark Shadow. Froppy is a little less consistent because she doesn't really like find things as much, and her things are also a little more like you want more attacks but smaller, whereas Tokoyami can chuck 2 ruins and like probably get some damage in. Hers are come in a little smaller, but you can get more of them, so like there's more high roll there, right? And then Denki obviously has the most high roll, but you just have to hard draw everything, right? So they're kind of like the trinity of red in the format right now, and I really just rank them by like stability, but definitely sometimes these two will outperform him, and you know, vice versa and all that, right? It's just a matter of stability. Aoyama. I think Aoyama is probably definitely not down here. I think he's a fine, decent character. He's very average. He doesn't underwhelm me when I play him. He just feels like an average character, and that's fine. I don't think anything's extremely wrong with him. Everyone else just feels just more above the curve, right? And that's kind of all there is about Aoyama. This guy, Small Might, man, I think Small Might's got to go way down here. They're kind of like wasn't really, so like when the set first came out, we were kind of playing Small Might as like an All Might 1 extended deck. And then that whole playstyle is just not very good anymore. And then we were playing like the 6-check Palooza coordinated effort character field deck. But without coordinated effort, that deck just cannot exist anymore. And as a result, I think this character just like doesn't have anything to do now. I don't know how to build a functioning deck with this character now that like consistently does things. So I think he just sits way down here. He's just a very underwhelming character now. Unfortunately, the loss of coordinated just hit this guy too hard. To Kamui Woods. Kamui Woods, I think Kamui Woods is the top of A tier for me. I think Kamui Woods is the definition of the water deck, right? Like Kamui Woods is pretty much the best person to just play the good stuff water main deck. His character has the best interaction with it. I think you can side into the other characters very easily, but Kamui Woods just does everything the water deck wants to do. I think that's like the best defensive deck in the game. He's just the epitome of that, and the character is just very strong. Like, he's very simple, but he's very strong, and he has all the options that he needs to. All Might 3. This guy, man, this guy is still way up here for me. I think All Might 3 is still a huge top dog. He is so hard to deal with. He's so hard to play against. He has good matchups basically across the entire board. He's an 8-hander with 30 health that just gets free stats. Like, he just plays the best game of Universus you can possibly play, and there's not much you can do about it. And like, with so many 7-handers being so high up here, he's got such good matchups across the board. And like, Jiro, the thing about Jiro is that while she's not a 7-hander, she's not really able to play very good deadlock pressure. So All Might can go into deadlock all day and just like play his long game and just beat her up till she runs out of steam, really, because he just has more cards and more stats, and it's you can only go into that late game scenario holding so many blocks against this character. Like, you can, like, late game you can't just be like, okay, build 2 pass, hold 4 blocks, you know, go ahead and hit me. He's like, well, no, cool, all my stuff is like a bajillion speed or a bajillion damage now. You just can't enter those scenarios with this character, and that just makes him really, really, really strong. Like these three are my S tier. I think these are the 3 best decks, and then these guys are all just like, everyone in A tier is just like a hair under them. It's not a vast difference, man. But I do think these 3 sit a little bit above the rest. Ojiro is probably like here. Yeah, this is probably where I put Ojiro. He's a very, very solid and honest character. I mean, that's like his whole thing in the show, right? Is he's just plain. Like, he's just fine. Like, he's got some fine abilities on his back. He's got some nice symbols to play under, and he just kind of, you know, I think he's a better sideboard character than anything else. But even then, that's like less relevant now that Kirishima is just like completely out of the meta, really. So Ojiro just kind of sits here. He's just fine. Shoji. I actually think Shoji is quite good. I would put Shoji like somewhere up here. I think Shoji's really, really, really strong. I think a really, really skilled defensive player can do some insanely good things with Shoji and play some very, very, very tight games of Universus. And so I think he just sits like, you play Shoji on life and then you just like don't die. You just play throws every turn and then you just don't die because you have stuff like release and you can recur all your stuff and you have your health gain, and it's just a very, very good time. He's a very, very hard character to kill, like a very annoying fly, which is kind of funny because he just looks like a big old gross meat fly. So that's how I feel about Shoji. Big old B tier meat fly. Mina. Mina. I want to put Mina up here so bad. I want to so bad, man. But I feel like that might be a little biased, although she did top. She did top pretty hard. But I think realistically, Mina probably sits like around here. I think she's really, really, really high B tier, and like she's really close to squeaking into A tier. But I think these characters are just like significantly like there's like a significant cut above when it comes to these characters, even in the top of B tier. But I think Mina is still really, really good. I think you can play her on like all 3 of her symbols, and she's very strong. All 3 symbols interact really, really, really well with her. The life build is the one that topped, but I think Chaos and Water both have a ton of legs when it comes to Mina, and I would feel comfortable playing her on any symbols and would not be surprised to see her in the top cuts. She's got good card pools all around, and she just like plays good Universus. Like when you don't have attacks, she finds them for you. When you want a key foundation, she finds it for you, and she's hard to play around as well, right? Because if you just like block all, go to 0 in hand, and she just finds that big dunk on the end of her build, it's like, well, it's like super free damage against you. So she's really hard to deal with in some aspects. Mount Lady. Mount Lady is like, I don't think she's down here. I feel better about her than I do these characters, but she's like way down here. The character's just very, very slow. Like it takes so long to get your ladies, to find them in the first place. You have to play like such a small minimalistic deck just so you can find your Mount Ladies really quickly. There's no way to search them. There's like not really good momentum ramp in her symbols. Like it's really, really slow to get the ladies, get the momentum, and use the momentum. It's just an arduous process that is not nearly worth what it's doing. All Might 2. Man, I think All Might 2 is like right here. Either here or here. It's one of the two for sure. I think this character is very, very strong. I think finding the correct main deck for him is very complicated because of like how he wants you to play him. But he's such a strong character with such a strong ceiling, and I think like once the code is kind of cracked for this character, we're gonna see him at a lot more top tables. Honestly, could even maybe squeeze up to here, but I just don't know if he beats up these guys consistently enough. I just don't know if he beats up these guys consistently enough. I think I still feel a little bit better about all of them than I do this guy. But this character is really, really, really strong. It's no secret that I've been playing this character a ton, and I have an absolute blast playing All Might 2, and I love this character. Ochako 2, continuing with all the DLC boys, right? I think Ochako 2 is somewhere up here, like very, very close knit with Denki. I think Denki, she's a little less like high rolly and a little like you have to really, really draw, right? Because she has like a true 5-hander, and if you're going to be able to block everything, she's not going to do a lot. But in the early game, this character is really, really terrifying. If she goes first and then just like opens like double long lasting or some crazy stuff, like on any of her symbols, she's going to be insane. Also, like she has the air symbol. I think the air symbol is like the best symbol in the game. Air is just really, really crazy right now, and so anyone with air is just going to get to do some really, really nutty stuff. But this character is just crazy strong. I mean, we saw her like see a ton of popularity in the first Provisional, even in the Kirishima dominated format, and then she saw a ton of popularity in the second one as well. This character is really, really strong, and at this point, I think everyone kind of understands that she is and why she is. Ida 2. I think Ida 2 is a little bit better than we've given him credit for. I think the character is kind of bad, but he's a 7-hand size order character or a 7-hand size void character with like a decent ability and like can see more cards. I think he probably sits somewhere around here. Like I think he's fine, again, just by virtue of like how his stats feel. I think he's just an okay character. He's very, very average, but I don't feel like bad playing him, right? And then last but not least, well actually kind of least, Su 2. I still think this character is just kind of bad. I don't know, not bad, but like I just don't really know what I would do with her. Like the abilities just don't synergize very well, the cards don't synergize well with her. Like your opponent has to be like really bad to just like hard play into this character all day. Like I don't know, I just don't think that she just sees a lot. I just think she doesn't see a lot of value in what she wants to do. It's kind of like not really much more complex than that. The character just isn't very well designed, I think. That's just how I feel. Alright, and last but not least, let's rank these provisional characters. Once again, like I said in the intro, I don't have a ton of data and experience with these. I'm just kind of putting them in for the sake of it. And it's more so just kind of based off of my impressions of reading them and just kind of gauging their power level. So first, Midnight. I'm actually kind of hot on Midnight. I think Midnight probably is somewhere around here in like high B tier. I think she's a very, very solid character. Like she's very, very consistent, and she makes a lot of attacks really good. She has already a lot of cards that interact really well with her. And she's just very consistent based on like her ability to just see more cards. Like it's just really easy for her to find a kill turn when she needs it. So I would not be surprised to see her at all in the top 16. Kurogiri is like, seems fine. Like it's kind of like Ida 2 syndrome, right? He's a 7-hand size order void character, which I think just kind of can't be bad. And he's got a defensive ability to boot. Yeah, I think I'd probably put this guy like somewhere like high C tier maybe. I think it's probably where Kurogiri ends up. I think he's like very, very average. I think his abilities are quite strong actually, but the cards don't really interact. The cards to interact with him like that aren't really there yet. So I think as a result, his deck as a whole is pretty average right now. But if you got some specific support, I would very much see this character gaining a lot of stock in the current environment. Present Mike, I don't know, man. He's a mill deck, right? And like, do you just build him for the mill? Do you build him for like just the stats? I don't know. Either way, and he probably ends up somewhere around here. I think he's a very, very average character. I guess like I'm a little more into him than these characters, but until I see like, I don't know, if someone finds the list, right, to make consistent mill work, then like I'm all for it, right? But as of right now, I don't know. I don't see it initially, so this is where the character's going to be for me right now. Sato, I think I feel very similarly about Kurogiri. I think he's like just a very like solid C tier character. Maybe he's a bit more like high B. I could realistically put Sato like maybe like right around here. I think he's fine. Like he sees a lot of cards and he just gets like some nice stats. He kind of just feels like Diet All Might 3 in a lot of ways. Because he just kind of gets he just gets cards and stats, which I think is just strong. I think he's like kind of fine right here. And then Toru Hagakure, I really think that Toru is just like a sideboard character. But if I were going to try and play like a Toru focused deck, I don't know, I just don't think the character does enough. She probably sits like somewhere around here for me. Not overall like crazy impressed with her. I think her abilities just don't really do enough things. But again, this is all just kind of based off me reading this text and being like, hey, is this good? Is this bad? I think this is just kind of how I feel about these on very offhand first impressions. The only character in here I've played games with is Midnight, so it's possible that I haven't played with the others enough, and maybe they're actually more B tier-ish. But this is just kind of how I feel about them reading them. So that's what the provisionals in. Enjoy the rest of the video, guys. And guys, that is my tier list. I feel like I was really in depth. I feel like I explained and articulated my opinions really well and why everyone sits where they do. I'm sure there's a lot of things I don't know. I've certainly had a lot more experience with all of these characters since I made the last tier list video, and that has affected a lot of my opinions, but I'm sure these opinions could still be greatly affected by a lot more experience and a lot more knowledge. But as of March 31st, going into Omaha next week, this is where I feel the set 1 format stands. These are my opinions on it, and this is my definitive tier list for set 1's format going into Crimson Rampage as it comes out, which just completely changes literally freaking everything, I'm sure, and I can't wait for all of that to be in the wild. But for now, guys, this is how I feel, and if, like I said, if you have any different opinions, please let me know them in the comment section down below. Thank you all so much for watching this super long, cool, in-depth video. I'm going to see y'all in the next one. Bye bye.